you have an emergency, it is expected that you come for such. But in Nigeria, if you have been called that you have an emergency, and at the same time, if you are called from your child's school that if there are things that you need to settle, naturally, you go to your child's school. Why? Because the government has not put things in place to ensure that your children are taken care of. So you have to take care of your own. Everybody is a chairman of a community. You produce your water, you produce your light, you produce your school fees, you produce everything. So if someone is dying, it might die. That's just the truth. And it's only when government is responsive enough to produce what they call, because I cannot say we, I'm not part of who they call it, basic amenities. In Nigeria, what is basic in other countries are not basic. And when I say basic, you start from electricity, water system, transportation, health. When all those things are not in place, I can tell you, as we are having this program, if you get if there's an attention for you for emergency, what will happen is you want to disappear. It's just natural. But if you are in other climes, you know that even if you are not there, paramedics, they've taken care of some things. Things are going on. You understand?
Okay. In which areas then do you think we should start cutting costs?
No, the only way we are cutting costs is, let's say the truth. I don't think because we have 36 states that we should have 36 ministers or more. It's just the truth. There are several ministers that can be compressed. We have in Lagos State have 24 commissioners, 23 commissioners, 14 special advisors. Do they know up to that? Everybody are either somebody's boy, somebody's cycle one way or the other. So everybody needs to eat out of the government. The truth and the reality is that cost of governance is high because the people that are leading, just like she said, they are not responsive enough to the economic situation. We don't have to have several people before things are done properly.
Okay, Mrs. Beniche, you looked at the budget, what's coming into the country, about over 4 trillion, as in what we're earning, and then what we're spending is supposed to spend about over 7 trillion. That's the budget 2017. It's almost the same thing that happened in 2016, even though the budget was a little lower. Although there are arguments that the budget this year is actually lower than the budget in real terms. But let's look at the cost of things. For instance, cost of elections. We didn't have an election in 2016, and we don't have an election this year, but we have different elections in different places. Lagos is having an election today, for instance. Cost of that. Everything is shut down today because an election is happening. Now, cost of elections, cost of salaries, that's why you're talking about the bloated ministries, and then pensions to politicians and procurement costs. All of these things. You may ask the question, where can we start cutting down on this cost?
You know, the reality is, first of all, when you want to cut down costs of government, you need to face the brutal facts. We have a course to teach the brutal facts of your current reality. What is the brutal facts of today's current reality? That you're not a producing nation. And therefore, because you're not a producing nation, that even the oil that you have decided to get addicted to is already also a negative. And therefore, you need to think like a normal human being. That if I have income not coming in, automatically all expenditures must be reversed. Means that, yes.
Question. You're not a producing nation. Does it mean you don't have nothing to produce, or you're not paying attention to the production potentials you have?
A nation that produces is a nation that converts its natural resources to potential markets for the international market. Being not a producing nation as a nation, fundamentally, we only give out our raw materials. For example, financially, it said that we lose about 900%, 700 to the 900, depends which market, from cocoa, by just exporting cocoa without processing it. You export cocoa as a raw material, it gets processed into lovely chocolates that all of us buy when we travel to bring back in, and the Milos that our children must drink. You take your cassava, which we are one of the highest exporter of the cassava, But that cassava has potential of 100 plus derivatives, which you have incapacity, whether at the human capacity level, you have not trained your children enough in science, and those who have the science have gone out of the country, contributing to other nations' capacity. So within your country, you don't have the capacity to convert a great cash crop product like cassava that has potential more than the oil and gas. But because you are too myopic in leadership, lazy, non-patriotic, you are not concerned about the country, you just want the position and the power and the finance, therefore you don't sit down and think, say, what can we do? For example, a state like Benue State, Plateau State, Niger State, and most of these states that have good land for such cassava, good cassava, that the demand at the international level, you send your cassava to China, China processes at X level, at various levels, and gives it back to you, gives it back to the African countries, which is at 1 billion, India is hitting 1 billion, China is over 1 billion, the markets are all there, and you sit down and you're not producing. Then you want to now eat to overfull. You are a fool. Therefore, you need a cure for foolishness. And the only cure for foolishness is 2019 elections. There's not much we can do now. The leaders you choose will determine the nation you have, period. If there's any passion I have right now, it's called voters' election education. Because the reality is that what we have in the National Assembly cannot deliver us. And let them hear me and hear me well. Because the reality is that right here, right now, you cannot present this to the world. And you expect that the nations of the world will look at us and say, Habana, some of our guys went to Stanford, we went to Harvard, we went to Cambridge. What are we doing with our education? But because of our traditional values, the way we think and our value system as a nation is what he's talking about that is backward. It has deteriorated. We are not thinking.
So I'm thinking, as you're talking, you talked about the 2019 elections,
yes,
that we should choose the leaders that we want.
Yes.
So that means as a people we also have a part.
Of course.
He's talked about the 36 states having 36 ministers, having commissioners. But when you look at it, the Constitution is still there. There's a provision there for all of this. Even though, of course, there are some extensions by public officers. Now, as a people, what can we do to say we don't want 109 members in the Senate? Some people may come up and say, you don't want me represented at the National Assembly? We have over 300 of them at the House of Representatives.
I mean, the House of Representatives.
So how do we, as a people, are we ready to take it in that we don't want this large amount of people in public office?
I mean, he put it at the ministerial level, which is important. At the senatorial level and the House of Assembly, it's critical that we have representations. But the key is not the representation, it's the individuals that we vote in that are concerned. For example, in the 2019 elections, we should have men and women who say we want to tear down the 1999 Constitution and rebuild a new nation. Those are the kind of people we should vote for. Any man who cannot make promises. You see, our people have not been empowered to know how to bring down their own senator back home. They don't have that power. Because the reality is that the senator, who really won the election, how many senators can boldly say, I won on merit? That my people really sent me there. They didn't send them there. So there's no voter participation on election in the reality. And that's why, like America is investigating voter fraud, by the time we start our own voter fraud election, we may not get to the end of the game. But suffice it to be so, we have a nation to move forward. We don't want war. We don't want anarchy. So we have to look for processes that will gradually take us out. And what are those processes? You begin to choose the leaders that want to represent you and educate the people that a bag of rice cannot represent a 4-year tenure of a man. Even if you are taking a spoon of the rice every day or a cup, how far can a bag of rice take you? We need to teach our people, because statistics, like I said, there are a lot of research on nation and development and understanding. I said that if the people educational level do not increase, the likelihood of them having the capacity to choose is also minimized.
Okay.
So we have a multiple myriad of issues, but guess what? I am optimistic that Nigeria has the individuals in the private sector that can do this.
Okay, we'll come back. We'll just take a moment and we'll come back to continue this conversation. Please don't go away.